Hi, Chris Duncan here, folks, for the inaugural edition of the Daily Duncan. And thanks for joining me. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Eileen McDargh, who's going to talk to us a little bit about her experiences, what she does, and some of the things that we may be going through, and maybe some suggestions on how to sort of manage and cope with the situation that we find ourselves in these days with the coronavirus. Eileen is a world-class speaker and trainer. She has worked with Fortune 500 companies and also the armed forces. I wanted to talk about too, Eileen, at some point that I saw a number of pharmaceutical companies that you've spoken with before in terms of facilitating those companies, getting the companies to reach their full growth potential and the people in the companies to reach their full potential. I think these days people might be particularly interested in pharmaceutical companies and why they would want someone like you to speak with them. But also an executive coach, also an author, and just an all-around wonderful person. But before we start talking, I do want to mention the thing that I like about you, Eileen, is how you make people feel, essentially.
Oh.
It's not about, you talk to these companies and they bring you in and you speak to these large audiences, right? I think you're rated #1 by global gurus in terms of folks speaking to large groups and motivating them to grow. But on a personal level, it's that effect you have on people, right? You can't help but feel energized when you hang out with you, Eileen. And also, you can't help but relate to you, right? It's your bluntness, your humor, the way that you present yourself in a vulnerable way that's easy to relate to. I think that effect that you've had on me, and I know you had on other people, is really one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on. Maya Angelou had that quote: "People will forget what you did for them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel."
Oh, thank you.
You have that gift, and that's why I'm sort of honored to have you on as the first guest and talk about some of these important things. And with that, how about this? What's going on? How are you dealing with everything that we've got going, and and where do you find yourself these days?
Well, first off, and I'm not quite sure when these will finally play, but you and I right now are sitting in the mix of that COVID-19, and we all are stationary at home, quarantined. So I'm like everybody else. And so, which is a really good reason for you to start the Daily Duncan. Because when we are alone, when we're separated from our teammates, from our organizations, from our churches, our mosques or synagogues, we can't, we're choosing not to do those things. You can feel really alone. So by you starting conversations, and hopefully at some point in time, people will call into you, they will send you questions. We begin a dialogue. So I think one of the benefits actually for me of having this space that's here is to be able to reach out and have conversations with people that I normally wouldn't have time to do. So that's what's going on for me. I'm finding all of it, how busy I can be when I'm not busy making money. And it's fascinating. I realize how much more writing I have to do. I've got some videos that I want to do. I've got books I need to read. I've got a precious husband that we can sit and watch television together, and oh my gosh, I'm sleeping until 6 o'clock in the morning.
I love it, right? The blessings, right, of this situation.
It really is. The gym is closed, so I don't want to make light. This is an incredibly challenging, serious, difficult time that we are in, not only as a community, as a nation, as a world. And so I think hopefully one of my missions right now is how can I help people wherever they are figure out how do I get through and manage today, because I don't know if I have tomorrow, but how do I make the most of what I have today?
And be grateful, right, for what we have. Yeah, I mean, one of the themes I had in my campaign for state assembly was bringing people together around things we have in common. And the idea of this show would be to do the same, to continue that mission of mine, hopefully. And I think this is the perfect time to do it. One of the things you mentioned, and I'm wondering if you can talk more about that, is where we find ourselves here. And I think for most of us, a lot of us, we feel very grateful for where we are. And in some ways we feel almost guilty perhaps, right? Because there's folks on the front lines, the healthcare workers who are battling, to contain this disease, and the people who obviously are affected by it. And then we find ourselves sort of, a lot of us under lockdown. We haven't been directly affected perhaps. But what we have is a lot of time for self-reflection, right? You end up with this extra time. And so what do you do with it? How do you be productive with it? That's a good question. But, one of the things I'll leave you with, and I'll turn it over to you, is, a lot of times when we have that time for self-reflection and we say we don't say, you're doing a bang up job. You're doing, we think about the things we're not doing well. And we then focus in on those. So in this time where we may have some more time for self-reflection, we find ourselves sort of kind of, really self-analyzing. And how do we make productive use of that time?
That's a really great question. And first, I want to say that for all of the men and women who are on the front line, and it's the nurses and the doctors that we see, but it's also everyone else who is in ancillary services, housekeeping, the dietary, long-term care, assisted living, all those people, they are putting themselves at risk for other people. So I cannot say more about how grateful I am for those folks. And I don't know how we ever repay them for it, other than to get our healthcare system back and working the way it really could and should. So when you say, what do we do with this period of self-reflection? I think first and foremost is to acknowledge that, oh my God, I have space. What's interesting is my new book is coming out in August, and the title of it is From Burnout to Balance, Building Resilience to Recharge, Refuel, and Reclaim What Matters. What I find interesting is that last year in May, the World Health Organization declared burnout to be a global, almost like a pandemic, a global occupational hazard. People are just going, oh my God, I'm working so hard. I never see my family. I'm spread so thin. I don't, I never, your to-do list is never done. You keep going. And then all of a sudden, and it really is like a sudden, it's like, oh, wait, what? Aren't I supposed to be doing something? And so there's a tendency to figure out that because I'm not busy the way I was, that I'm not valuable. So
yeah, I was going to ask, how would you define burnout?
Burnout in its simplest way is utter exhaustion, to feeling that you have no resources left, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. You are simply fried. Your resources are gone. So it is this feeling of depletion, this lack of energy. And the research is saying when people feel burned out, they are more likely to go to an ER. They're more likely to take a sick day. And they are more likely to either leave an organization or worse, they stay, but they've left. You know what I mean by stay and left. And we have done that. And in the healthcare environment, oh my gosh, we have absolutely done that. So I think and I will use the word because it's the way of reframing, one of the graces of this is this space in which we can come back and say, how is it that I have been working? Does this make sense? I mean, I can't tell you how often, Chris, I go into an organization and they do things and I say, why are you doing it that way? I don't know. It's the way we've always done it. It's a legacy system. And we now have an opportunity to say, well, wait, hold on. What is it that we really need? What is it we really want? And so when we're here at home with this time of reflection, I think one of the questions is, at the end of the day, what are the three most important things to me? And I believe too, Chris, that when you get it out of your head and you put it on paper in the form of a journal, you begin to look at it more objectively. When I begin to say, what is most important to me? It's fascinating. The stuff that I thought was so important, it kind of falls away.
Yeah.
Just falls away.
By the way, you sound like my wife, Haley. She's been trying to get me to journal for years, and maybe since you've said it, I'll start more in on it. But yeah, she said the same thing, and again, yeah, this is the time where sometimes we, like you say, when we don't have these things, is the time where we realize, why did we really need these things? Why were we making ourselves busy with all of these other things and not paying more attention to our significant other or our kids or our friends that wanted and needed us to be more present, right? For them.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, we make all kinds of excuses for ourselves. Oh, I can't do that. I'm way too busy. I mean, no, I got a list like this, we check it off. And that's one of the things I think journaling is helpful. Not that you have to do it every day, but the first place, now that if people are listening to this, they have some space, is to begin with, what is it that is most important to me? And at the end of the day, what am I really grateful for? When you begin to write what you're grateful for, it's, whoa, well, you know what? I'm actually grateful it stopped raining and the water isn't coming into the leak in my roof that I have right now. I'm really grateful that we figured out how to get this going. So you could start what I think will be a wonderful program, the Daily Duncan. I'm grateful that I get to start that way. I'm grateful that my husband is healthy. I'm grateful that my kids are safe and different. There's so much, this is just me, but there's so much that I think if we focus on what we're grateful for, then we also can come from a place of saying, okay, what do I choose? This is a really important word, Chris. What do I choose today to do that represents those three things that are most important to me? And the word that I purposely use is the word choose. Yes. Choose, I think, is one of the most powerful words in our language. You don't have to do this. I did not have to come on this call. Yes. You did not have to decide to do the Daily Duncan. You have chosen to do this. And when you say, I choose, now you are in command of that. No one else is making you do this. So we choose to be physically distanced. We choose to be socially connected. We choose to jump up and down in the house because I can't go to the gym. We choose different things. So when we have this space, I believe that, at least for me, I want to say, what is it I'm choosing to do right now?
There's more space to choose too, and to live because we've got these distractions out of the way. Yeah. That we can really focus in and again choose the things that represent our values and act intentionally in that way. Well, I tell you what, I'm grateful as I sit in my modified studio here, and which is also the dining room, I guess, that the kids haven't come running through, and the cat, which lives right over here, hasn't come running through either. But yeah, I mean, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this. And this situation, you make the best of what you've got. It's given me that chance. So here's one thing that kind of ties into that I wanted to ask you about. The book that I'm reading, and I'm very much enjoying, I think it was your first book, is called My Resiliency GPS. And I'll ask you what GPS stands for in a second, but really enjoying the book. And I've got to tell you, Eileen, and I know you pretty well, but I think anybody reading it would feel like this is a good friend who has seen me kind of stumble through my life, perhaps, and is offering advice for those specific times. I really feel like it has that personal touch. And GPS is obviously in the title. We'll talk about that. And actually, let me see if I can figure out my my tech savviness here and flash it up there.
Oh, look at you! Aren't you so smart?
Right, before I mess things up, I'll go back. But yeah, but GPS, right? So GPS, people think GPS is that's where you're sort of located. And I was thinking about GPS in the terms of the kind of concepts we've been talking about. And it's about knowing where you are, right? And how do you grow if you don't know where you are? Right?
Absolutely.
You may feel like you're in this terrible, terrible spot, but that terrible, terrible spot is the launching pad for the next great thing that's happening in your life, right? That period of loss, despair, or whatever, maybe that needed transitional time to move you to the next phase. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what GPS
Well, it's your resiliency GPS, and the GPS stands for your growth potential strategy. And I believe that resiliency is not about bouncing back. It's not about grit. It's about growth. It's about growing through challenge or opportunity. And so with any GPS system, you can't tell the Siri or whomever where you want to go until they know where you are. And I think that's one of the places where we have to start, is what's going on in my life right now. And then where is it that I want it to go? And here's an important part, Chris. You don't have to know the final destination. All you have to know is how many more blocks ahead do I need to go? What are those stepping stones? And what is it that what's my strategy to begin to get to that? And we're going to have setbacks. You're going to have detours. Things are going to turn around. But I think when we begin to say, what's my potential? Where do I want to go? And where am I now? And let me acknowledge you, Chris, too, because you ran for the California Assembly. You put everything you had into it. Unfortunately, you were compelled to enter late into the race because of the work that you had done. But you stayed the course. And then when you didn't get it, you could have gone back and you could have licked your wounds and hid under the bed, and put a sheet over your head and say, that's it.
That was a thought.
Instead, oh, you did do that, huh? You slept with the cat. But instead, what you've done is, okay, you took a step back. You said, well, that hurt. But then you said, okay, what's the next thing that I can do? And I think I know you well enough that you said, where is my contribution? Yeah. What is it that I can do? I'm an attorney. I've got that as a practice, but I think there's more that I can do. And one of the things that I observed from you in the campaign is a strength that you have is exactly the ability to create conversation. It is the ability to talk to people of all rank and file, name, rank, demographics, doesn't matter, age, to be able to have a conversation with them. And if we're looking for leaders who can do that, we don't just want to talk to people who are like us. Right. We want to talk to everyone and bring it together. So I think what you did and where you are, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you are saying, where's my next step? Where am I willing to step out? Where am I willing to try this? Right. I think it takes a tremendous amount of guts to do what you did, and in quick order to turn around and say, I'm not finished yet. Where do I want to go now?
Thank you so much, Eileen. Frankly, I was getting I'm an emotional guy. I was getting my emotions stirred a little bit, right? That's very heartfelt, and it's true. And I got in because of a sense of service, and I wanted to contribute. And I felt that I had a background that might work to bring people together to solve problems, not because there's a political agenda there, but because it's the right thing to do. So I really appreciate those kind words. It has me thinking, about a situation I was in after the election, though, and I think it's a situation that a lot of us find ourselves in. And you mentioned it a second ago. We have maybe the broad contours of where we want to go, but we're sort of frustrated that we don't know what immediate steps we can take. I know I put a lot of pressure on myself. I feel like I should be doing X, Y, and Z, or I should know what X, Y, and Z are.
You mean you should on yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
You're shitting on yourself.
I'm hard on myself, and I think a lot of people are hard on themselves. So how do we manage that, right? How do we go easy on ourselves, maybe? Or how do we sort of foster those next first steps coming when we are in a period where they're maybe not readily apparent to us, but we know we have something bigger we want to do?
That's a great question. And I'm going to go back. Go back to that notion of writing. When you sit there and our minds do this, we talk all the time. I should be doing this. Take it out of your head. Put it down. Have a conversation with yourself on paper. In fact, Ira Progoff was the pioneer of something called Dialog Workshop. And he, amazing, now deceased, fabulous psychologist out of New York. And he would say that you would create this dialogue. And so here's Chris 1 talking to Chris 2. And Chris 1 is saying, Chris 1, you should have, and Chris 2 says, but wait a minute, I'm doing this. And so you actually have a conversation with yourself. And as you sit there and look at the conversation, you say, wow, well, is that really true? Do I really believe that? You know, and let me give you an example. I'll give a personal example. This is my second marriage. I have a fabulous husband, and we'll be married 40 years, May 18th, which is amazing since I'm only 27. I don't know how that happened.
Yes.
But
Congratulations.
But I adopted his 3 children. The youngest one was really a challenge. And I could not figure out, I should be doing that. So I sat with myself and I had a dialogue with her in my head, but on paper. And I put myself in her place, and then I wrote what I was feeling. And as I did this, more light bulbs went off about how to understand her, but also how to cut myself some slack, about taking over, 3 kids that,
Yes.
I'm an interloper in this thing. And it was having that dialogue and putting it on paper that at least gave me some breathing room.
Yes.
The same thing for me happened when I was caring for my mother. I cared for my mom for the last 6 years of her life, and she went from assisted living to skilled nursing to memory care. And anyone who's ever cared for an aging parent who's gone through that whole cycle knows there's a tremendous amount of loss, of hurt, of despair, of confusion, of anger. Right. And one of the things was that mom kept doing things that were not in her best interest. And I realized that I could not control all of her life. I could make her safe. So one thing I could do, I could make her safe. We could put the food in front of her, but I couldn't control some of those choices because ultimately this was her life to lead regardless of how it played out.
Right.
And until I understood that, it was really hard. But once I could release that for her to be her, however that looked, and just love her in whatever way she showed up, that was a great gift.
Yeah, that ability to go a little easy on yourself and give yourself a break. I think it's something we really need to do. What do you think about, sort of related to that, doing things that are out of our comfort zone, that when we're feeling maybe a little lost or, in a transitional time, how important is it to try something new, perhaps that your gut tells you, wait a minute, you can't do this. And maybe even something that's a little crazy. Is that something that people should try to do?
Well, first off, I don't want to tell anybody about shooting because I don't want you to. Let me tell you what I discovered for myself at this stage I am. Now, I think you are incredibly gutsy because you just didn't say, well, I'm going to talk to 2 or 3 people. You said, wait, I'm going to do the Daily Duncan and I'm going to jump right in and I've got this big old microphone in front of me and I'm going to go for it. What for me, and it's been really fascinating. This was one of my resolutions last year, is that at least once a month, I need to do something I have never done before. Now, it's not falling out of a plane. And actually, this is a practice that started in the Middle Ages in Europe. It has continued only, as far as I can understand, in the Basque region of Spain. And every month for 12 months on your birthday, so like mine's the 5th of the month, you do something you've never done before. Well, I decided, first off, I don't want to be held to just a day. So every month I try to do something I've never done before. And Chris, it is amazing. I've done things like I signed up for a Pilates class. I've never taken a Pilates class. Okay, I did that. Last week,
You're probably saying, I'm not a Pilates person, right? Like, oh, that's for other people. I don't do Pilates. I
just try
do
it.
this.
It's to do something. And actually, I write it in my day timer at the end of the month. I keep a roll. What are the things I've done I've never done before? Well, I've never given a webinar for 700 people, which is what I did last week. Oh my goodness. I've never gotten gel on my nails. Oh, I think I'll try that. They don't have to be big things. It's when you stretch yourself that you begin to experience other pieces of life. I've never eaten artichokes. Okay, I'm going to try an artichoke.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think, it's in some ways it's sort of counter to our nature. We don't want to try the things that we aren't familiar with. We want to go back to those familiar things, even if it's something small, like taking a yoga class was mine. I was like, I don't wear those stretchy pants and going back, and that's somebody else. But then I did it. And I do enjoy it, but more importantly, I think you learn something about yourself, right? When you try these things, even if you fail or even if you don't like it, it's not about that. It's about stretching yourself, like you said. And in doing so, testing yourself, and you learn a little bit about yourself. You learn a little bit about something else you didn't know before. You bring that knowledge into some new problem that you had that's totally unrelated.
Yeah. I have, so here we are, almost midway through April. And so I started this last year in January, and I gotta tell you, it's a kick. And to make myself, when I do say, oh, I've not done that before. Okay, I'll write it down.
Right.
I'll write it down. And I keep, this is what I do. I keep a monthly log, if you will. And it looks at mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual and material, 5 areas of our life. And at the end of the month, well, let me backtrack. How many times we get to December 31st and you say, where did the year go? Yeah. I have no idea. And it does. So what I decided, I don't want my life to just vanish. And all of a sudden, December 31st, I'm going, well, that was fun, I guess. So at the end of the month, I give myself goals, mental goals, that's just related to my work, to my writing, all intellectual, physical goals, what do I do with my body? Emotional goals has to do with my reading, what are the things I want to learn, and emotional goals, who I want to connect with, and then spiritual goals. At the end of the month, let me tell you, my little day timer here, I can go through and I write down I only write in this book the end of each month. And Chris, I got to tell you, when you get to December 31st and you pick up this book that has 12 months of mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, then there you go, oh, wow, I forgot I did that.
Right.
I have journals that must stretch back at least 25 years. And what they are is the 12 months of that year. And it's fascinating. But you also feel again that you are in command of your life rather than coming to December 31st and going, I don't know.
And that's incredibly important to remind yourself, yes, that you control. So many times we think we're being sort of pushed around by circumstances, but that's not true, right? And it's all about our mindset. It's how you approach things. And again, back to giving yourself credit, right? Thinking about what a wholesome and full year you had has to be an incredible experience. So I tell you what, let's conclude it shortly. And I think I hear my 4-year-old getting restless in the background is part of it, but also time is incredibly valuable. And I thank you so much for your time, Eileen.
You're welcome.
And I think, how about this? And I think I know what it might be because we've touched on it, but I wanted to see if you would leave us with something that, a point of advice to use to move forward in terms of growing, in terms of coping with our circumstances, in terms of being a better family member and friend. And, it seems to me like it's writing these things down, right? I mean, is that one thing that you would say that people should?
I think it is powerful. I think writing, getting it out of your head. If you listen to some of the great writers, they say, I write so I know what I'm thinking. It's just because otherwise it's like this doom loop. It just goes over and over and over and over and over again, and you go back and look at it. I mean, that's one of the things with the space that we've been offered. I'm pulling out, Chris, all kinds of things that I forgot I did that. Oh, well, that was pretty good. Maybe I need to go back and revisit that again. So that's just me. I think the practice of gratitude is an incredible practice at all times, but particularly now. Grateful for what we individually have, grateful for the men and women who are supporting us, grateful that we live in a country where we can vote, where we can walk the streets, and where we have an opportunity to be community helpers to each other. I think that's one of the other things that now we see people helping each other we never saw before. So this event, this pandemic, rips away the curtain, and we get to see who's really there.
Yeah, and I think about that, right? There's the spontaneous clapping that happens in cities, I think at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock tonight, you're just sort of overwhelmed by it. So how about, let's leave us, what does that gratitude do for us, right? So it's, you know, it sounds good to be grateful. What is that, how does that translate into a positive thing for us when we're grateful?
Let me put it this way. If I don't have anything to be grateful for, I ain't positive.
All right.
So I think just the word, I am grateful. It's why in many of our houses we have grace before meals. We say we're thankful that I have food on my table. And sometimes we forget the power of even saying, wow, when I say I'm grateful. In fact, the Japanese have a word called itadakimasu. And itadakimasu, in that single word, says, I am thankful for the sun, for the rain, for the farmers who planted the seeds, for the people who tilled the soil, for the people who brought it up, for the people who packaged it, for the truckers that got it into the stores. And think of the people in the stores right now. We're grateful for them. That one word, which I think is a powerful thought, that it takes that whole transition and presents it to us. And wow, there's a lot to be grateful for. Oh, I apologize. That's my fault. So sorry. So sorry.
Well, so once you're grateful, the optimism just flows, right? And I think that's maybe the point there. It seems like it seems a little trite, frankly, to people. Oh, I don't want to be. Why should I be grateful? Why do I have to write? No, it's a great practice. You're exactly right.
It's a good practice.
And I'm grateful for you, Eileen, and you agreeing to come on in my first show here, and being such a great friend and a great mentor.
Thank you.
And again, thank you so much for your time. And
you're welcome. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again. All right, everybody go and check out Eileen's book, My Resiliency GPS.
Your resiliency. Your resiliency. Your resiliency GPS. It was my 6th book.
Yeah. It could be, if you read it, it's yours.
That's right.
But, and then, yeah, watch out for the next book coming out.
Right. Right. Burnout to Breakthrough. It's coming out August 4th. You can go on Amazon right now and you can pre-order it.
Fantastic.
Be the first in your neighborhood to get it, which I would dearly love you to do.
Yeah, and what perfect timing, right, to have it come out right about now when people have time to read and should be, I think, reading books like that, right, that help us grow. So thank you so much, Eileen, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Chris.